Hey friends, it's Kerrie, Kath and Gina from Sydney. We are excited to be sharing this time with you. Get ready to dig in and replenish as we share our own experiences, thoughts and wisdom in the hopes that one, you know you're not alone, and two, that open, authentic conversations can shift your perspective and propel you and your business forward. As fellow entrepreneurs with a combined business knowledge of 60 plus years in hospitality, wellness, operations and logistics, we get what it takes to get a business off the ground and keep it running. We know the highs, the lows, the roundabouts, no standing and stop signs. We've been and still are in the trenches with you. So let's dig in and replenish. Today, we're chatting about disruption in the food, catering and hospitality industry. Gina, let's share with our listeners what's going on right now.
Girls, there's so much going on right now. While people are craving and embracing social interaction over a meal and drink, there's a new caution in the wind with this new Omicron strain of COVID-19, creating unease with border closures locally in South Australia, in addition to delayed international border openings. We're also seeing tensions rising, which is generating volatility in the stock market. And every state's following a different plan and trajectory with a common goal of getting as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. So for the food and beverage industry medium term, disruption is unfortunately an ongoing reality. But this all said, a taste of freedom is here. International borders in New South Wales and Victoria are open, and other state borders are open to varying degrees across the country, which means one thing: freedom. Australia, we can almost taste it. Kathy, every state, as I said, is following a different trajectory, yet all states are coming into the best possible time for hospitality businesses to thrive. However, with staff shortages, slow international tourism and reluctance of workers to return to the CBD, what's your view on what can be done in the foreseeable future for food and beverage, the hospitality industry?
Yeah, great question, Gina. You know, a lot of us are asking the same thing. Right now, most of us are really focused on what we can control. And we hear so much about the common strategies that we can steer our business to success. So, like, some of these strategies include things like reviewing and refreshing our customer experience. We all want repeat visitation. We all want our customers coming back. But what are we doing to ensure that they do? So, I think it's really important to come back to basics, looking at the importance of first impression. What are we doing when those customers walk into our venue? Are we making eye contact? Are we making our customers feel super special? Are we remembering our regulars' names, their coffee orders? Are we doing things like replenishing their drinks or clearing their tables so that, it's always feeling clean and ready for the next course? So the customer experience is crucial. We all know it, but we really need to revisit it. The other thing we need to look at is our menu and margin. I know a lot of us think, we're competing against probably the local cafe or restaurant, but we really, as individuals, we need to know who our stars are on the menu, the popular items with high margins. And we need to really think about, stopping to flog a dead horse. If we've got things on the menu that are unpopular and have low margins, we need to get rid of them. We need to use technology to save time, automate processes. Look at your rostering systems, your accounting systems, your work health and safety systems. What can you do to save money in those areas? There's so many apps available now. We need to focus on marketing to drive sales, building customer databases, direct marketing via email messaging, branding ourselves via social media, but also understanding that if your product or customer service is weak, marketing may create a spike in sales, but won't lead to sustained growth. So before spending time and money on marketing, ensure the service and product is perfect. And finally, apply for those government grants. They're out there. And they saved us. So look at them. Go to business.gov. see what's out there with rent assistance and really take advantage of it.
Yeah, Kathy, we've heard about all of these strategies before, right? Many of us have applied for grants and we really had no choice. And we really want to enhance that customer experience, but we're challenged by a lack of staff. So we are using technology and pricing and being creative with our menu, but increasing margins really do continue to be a focus. It seems that nothing's changed, but in actual fact, things have really changed. So a post-pandemic world, or a world that's coming out of a crisis, is historically different. Pre-COVID, when we had an idea within an organisation, there was always a reason why we couldn't do it. We were not big enough, we were not small enough, there's a need for focus, we need to hit goals. But post-COVID, with everyone striving to survive, we move into a mode of action and innovation, and we certainly saw that and are still seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely, Kerrie. It's really important to understand what happened after a major crisis in the past to actually identify major opportunities for the future. It's not the first pandemic or world crisis. It's happened before. And really, history gives us an insight of what was done and what happened. Therefore, we can get those insights, and they're valuable insights that will help us understand what's going on now and what could possibly happen in the future in our business.
Absolutely. Let's look at innovation that occurred during periods of crisis and pandemic in history. Let's think about the bubonic plague, World War I, World War II, and the Spanish flu. There were 4 things that happened following these periods. Firstly, there was significant social change. We saw the rise of women's liberation following the Spanish flu. Women started to take more power in the 20s. We saw the flapper girls that appeared, and, the jazz age began. Then we saw the desire, or the rise, I should say, or the desire of opulence following crisis, the desire for a quality life. People are seeking new experiences, and they seek splendor. The power of influencers was born in the 1920s, post-pandemic. It was the invention of the silver screen and the rise to fame of the movie star. They were the influencers then. And lastly, labour shortages were a symptom of a world post-pandemic and post-crisis in the past, as they are today. The invention of the washing machine and vacuum cleaner were created to automate labour because of the staff shortage in the 20s. In the 1940s, post-World War II, we saw the invention of the jet engine, the computer, and the microwave oven. Today, we may need to challenge our processes. Take the Body Shop, for example. They've just recently done away with resumes and will employ only on attitude.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? Times are really changing. The pandemic has created that enormous change to the social fabric of society. Just think about millennials right now. They have a dream of a whole new world order. And we've spent the last 5 years studying the millennials versus the boomers. But now the millennials are experiencing social unrest and will rise up, as a group and really start creating change.
Yeah, I know it. Like, a great example of how millennials are looking at doing things differently is a business in the US called Mr. Beast Burger. Now, what is fascinating about this is that Mr. Beast Burger, a millennial who used social influencers, used that to his advantage and opened 900 locations in 6 months.
Crazy.
So what a vast difference to say if we were to compare that to McDonald's. McDonald's took 10 years to open 900 stores. So, this young millennial created his business plan whilst in lockdown, took a massive risk with his expansion plan, but it's working. So, and we'll start hearing more stories like Mr. Beast Burger as one of the symptoms of a post-pandemic world is that people start to feel more limitless and begin seeking a more meaningful life. And it's only natural that there's a surge of entrepreneurship, and because really even working from home loses its luster. So what's really interesting is that some of the biggest brands in the world came about following recession, crisis, or pandemic. They all seized the opportunities of changes in the social fabric and the technological changes. It was through chaos that brands such as Disney, Burger King, Microsoft, Apple, WhatsApp, the list goes on, Uber, Airbnb, they all seized opportunity when the world was in change.
Yeah, so Kerrie and Gina, I guess the real question for our listeners today is, what processes do you need to adjust for this new world, and what will your future branding strategy look like? By understanding what happened in the past, what can you do to optimize opportunity in your business for now and into the future? You know, to survive today, we really need to be agile, fast thinking, fast moving, and that's been called nimble. So we need to be focused on innovation. Does that menu need changing? Do we need to change our brand strategy? And we always need to stick to our core values. And if you haven't got clear values in your business, you know, you really need to think about who you are and what is important to you and your business. So developing core values for your business is the very first step in creating a successful business. Kerrie, I know you really loved Luke Mangan's journey during the pandemic. He was nimble and innovative and stuck to his core values. Can you give our listeners a quick insight to the pandemic journey of Chef Luke Mangan?
Yeah, absolutely, Kerrie. Like Luke's product, you know, as we know, is about seasonal, local produce sourced from the best farms and cooked to perfection by himself. The positioning of all Luke Mangan's eateries is about a premium experience. Everything he does is carefully created, from the name of the restaurant, the beautiful fit outs, and to the menu. Luke's eateries are theme based. They're focused on perfect product and extraordinary service. Now, Luke Mangan's positioning is actually his success because he's really clear and consistent with that messaging. We always know that his restaurants have got that extraordinary service, that delicious product, and that amazing experience. Now, he sources his clients, so his customers really come to him through his branding. It's really strong because he's always managed to assert his reputation as this foodie expert in his field. And to back this up, he backs this up with cookbooks that he's written. He's been a great advisor to some really high-profile restaurants. He gets a lot of free press, and of course, word of mouth goes a long way. So, as a brand, Luke's really he really sources his customers through his brand strength. So, as a chef.
That's right, Kathy. And Luke has multiple income streams. He sells food, but he also sells himself as a speaker, an advocate for restaurants, and he sells his books and consulting services. Luke builds each plate to perfection. He can do this well as he has a really strong team supporting the process, people with the right attitude and skills. And every plate he delivers to a table is built to perfection and delivered by highly motivated and experienced wait staff. Glasses are topped up, tables are cleared, and food is delivered in perfect timing. We never feel rushed at his restaurants. We experience a true premium dining experience. And before we leave his restaurant, most of us will have the opportunity and pleasure of meeting Luke. Part of his client services is actually leaving the kitchen once the final dish is delivered for the evening and actually taking the time to walk out into the dining area to chat with customers. He uses this as a way to get feedback and to also build familiarity with his customers. We don't ever forget our experience. We'd never forget the way we're made to feel. And he reminds us that he exists as his marketing strategy continues to build his brand via social media also. So how was Luke disrupted during the public health order? Luke could no longer generate sales from his restaurant. So just like everybody else at the time. So using his staff and cookery skills, he developed a menu that he could sell online. Luke had to build a deliverable menu. food that could be delivered whilst maintaining the highest quality standards, as this is what he's all about. And this is what we've all come to expect from him. So he created a menu and sourced the best, most appropriate packaging to ensure customers continue to have the best experience. He also included alcohol and his music list so customers felt like they were eating at his menu.
You know, Gina, delivery was different also. No experienced waiters required anymore, but delivery drivers, of course, were essential, as client services was key to his success. And it was one of his core values, you know, that exceptional customer service. He was forced to think of ways that he could maintain this service whilst not actually physically seeing his customer. So what he did instead was he wrote personalized letters for, you know, that he included in his deliveries. He recalled customers back the next day to get feedback on their meals. So Luke's success was rare, but it showed that by being nimble, innovative, but most importantly, sticking to your core values, those three things can actually help you to really pivot. Because, you know, when pivoting is not just something we do during a pandemic. Businesses have to pivot all the time, especially startups. If you find yourself in this startup phase of revenue that's just up and down, you know, there's no consistency, you've got to really think about what you're selling and the customer that you're trying to attract. You've got to, it's sort of like a reality check. If your sales aren't increasing, then there's a problem with what you're selling. So you need to think about how you can pivot to enjoy a return on your investment and get those sales consistently growing. So, you know, looking at Australia at a micro level, especially the hospitality industry, as you mentioned earlier, Gina, disruption's most likely here to stay. And the pandemic wasn't the first crisis that the hospitality has experienced in the last 3 years. Think back to major infrastructure projects. You know, we have the Sydney Light Rail project. Thousands of businesses were affected across Sydney. The Parramatta Light Rail project, the same thing is happening. If we think about new railway stations or railway stations that have closed, that cafes and businesses were relying on for foot traffic, when we even think about Westfield's opening, like when we think of Westfield at Bondi opening and the impact that had on Paddington and Oxford Street. Oxford Street, with, you know, up until about 2012, was a bustling strip of shops. It was so popular, thousands of visitors. Then Westfield Bondi opened and it began its decline. And now, of course, it's referred to as another Parramatta Road. So these projects affected thousands of businesses and so many couldn't survive. And just remember that with all the infrastructure projects that occur, there's no government support. There are no grants that will help these businesses. They have to rely on the good faith of their landlord. And for those of you listening, thinking good faith of the landlord, that's going to be very unlikely because landlords won't do anything unless they're forced to do something. And that was the difference with the pandemic. Because it was a public health order, because we were shut down by government then had to reimburse us. So businesses who were forced previously, pre-pandemic, had to pay their own rent, had to pay their own wages, had to pay their own suppliers. So they were forced to pivot. Now, those who failed to pivot were too slow to even consider it actually died during those infrastructure projects because they had no money to help them with time. Whereas currently, we did, well, with the pandemic, we did have time. But today, as venue owners, we're not only having to deal with the social changes that crisis and chaos creates, but as I mentioned, the rise of infrastructure as Sydney grows as an international city. So I mentioned those infrastructure projects earlier. What are the ones coming around the corner? And I'll ask you the question, what do you know about local projects in your area? When was the last time you visited your local council to find out about their 20-year city growth plan? I bet that most people haven't even done that yet. And we received that letter from council to advise us of that new project coming along in 18 months. And we all just don't want to believe it. We all sort of put that letter away, think it will never happen. But it does happen, and it shows, the past shows that it does happen every time. So go and visit your council, because think about changes such as limited parking, changes to bus stops, new train station entries, new roads that might be built. How will these affect your business? So it may be time to visit your council and find out about these major projects, because all you'll gain is peace of mind. The peace of mind is that you know what's coming, so you can create plans for that, for those events. You don't want them being nasty surprises. So we know the value of our business is based on many factors: our profit, our brand strength, our team strength, and more importantly, the lease, the rent we pay, the length of the lease, and the clauses within it. So I'll have to ask all of you listening to this, how many of you included a clause in your lease for disruption? And what will that rent reduction look like in that lease? Something that you need to think about.
Information gives us extraordinary power. So make sure you do your due diligence and enjoy the power and confidence of knowing and being prepared for what comes around the corner. Historically, a period of global crisis such as the pandemic leads to an 8 to 10 year period of global growth and wealth creation, which has then been followed by a great recession or even depression. So is your business recession proof? The pandemic has certainly highlighted the importance of risk management plans.
Yes, so much for our audience to take away today, ladies. It's, it's so important to understand what happened after a major crisis in the past to identify major opportunities for the future. I think that key takeaways or action steps for our listeners today really is, if history repeats itself, what will your 10 plan look like for your business? Will you focus on automating more processes? Will you be focusing on building your brand? Will you decrease your footprint? Will you look at the lease and negotiate stronger terms when it expires before you sign up for a new term? And, really, tap into the things that Kathy mentioned, really honing in on contacting your local council and getting really wise. Re-listen to today's episode and get familiar with these invaluable tips. So as we close today's chat on disruption, we hope you have picked up a thing or two that you can take away with you today and give your business that extra replenishment. We look forward to you joining us in our next episode about resilience and being a defensive operator.